Hi, I'm Bonnie. 3 weeks ago, I lost Richard, my husband of 42 years, to a sudden heart attack. We'd built a beautiful life together, a lakefront property that had become our sanctuary after retirement, and a carefully managed investment portfolio that would ensure I'd never want for anything. At least, that's what Richard had intended. Mom, you should really consider moving into something more manageable, my son Derek said, setting down his coffee mug on my kitchen island. His wife, Vanessa, nodded emphatically beside him. I've lived here for 20 years, Derek. This is my home, I replied, straightening the fresh flowers I'd arranged that morning. Richard had always loved fresh flowers. Vanessa leaned forward, her expression softening into what I'd come to recognize as her sympathetic but determined face. Bonnie, we're just worried about you. This place is enormous for one person, and the upkeep alone. I'm perfectly capable of managing my own home, I said. Besides, Richard set everything up with the property management company. They handle the grounds and maintenance. Derek exchanged a look with Vanessa that made something in my stomach tighten. Actually, Mom, I've been meaning to talk to you about the finances. My friend Martha's warning from yesterday echoed in my mind. Watch yourself, Bonnie. I've seen this before with friends who've lost spouses. Family swoops in thinking they know best, or worse, eyeing the inheritance. What about the finances? I asked, suddenly wishing I'd paid more attention when Richard handled our portfolio. He'd always encouraged me to learn, but I'd trusted him completely. Derek cleared his throat. Dad made some adjustments before he passed. He was concerned about your ability to manage such significant assets on your own. What kind of adjustments? The tightness in my stomach spread to my chest. He transferred the lake house and the majority of the stock portfolio into a trust. Vanessa and I are the trustees, Derek said, not quite meeting my eyes. That's not possible, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the panic rising within me. Richard would never do that without discussing it with me first. Vanessa reached across the table to pat my hand. It's all perfectly legal, Bonnie. We have the paperwork. Derek can explain everything. I'd like to see this paperwork, I said, pulling my hand away. Of course, Derek replied too quickly. I'll have copies sent over tomorrow. In the meantime, we should discuss your monthly allowance. Allowance? The word felt like a slap. Just to help you budget, Vanessa added. The trust will cover all your necessities, of course. That evening, I called Richard's best friend and our attorney, Jack Thompson. Jack, did Richard ever mention changing our estate plan? I asked after explaining Derek's claims. The long pause that followed told me something was very wrong. Bonnie, Jack said finally, his voice grave. I need you to come to my office first thing tomorrow morning. Don't sign anything, don't agree to anything, and don't tell Derek you're meeting with me. What's going on, Jack? I can't discuss this over the phone, but I will tell you this. The documents Richard and I prepared left everything jointly to you, with Derek as beneficiary after your passing. If someone's claiming otherwise, we have a serious problem. After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table where Richard and I had shared thousands of meals, my hands shaking. My son, our son, was trying to take everything, and somehow he expected me to thank him for an allowance from my own money. These signatures are forgeries, Jack declared, comparing the documents Derek had emailed me that morning to the originals in his file. Not even particularly good ones. Are you absolutely certain? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I'd recognized immediately that the scrawled Richard Caldwell looked nothing like my husband's meticulous signature. I've notarized Richard's signature for 30 years, Bonnie. I'd stake my career on it. Jack removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. The question is, how do you want to handle this? What are my options? We could contact the authorities immediately, or we could gather more evidence first. Either way, this is fraud, plain and simple. I thought of Derek as a little boy, his father teaching him to fish off our dock. I need to understand why, and I need to give him one chance to make this right. Bonnie, I strongly advise, one chance, Jack. Then we do this your way. Later that afternoon, I met my daughter, Melissa, at our favorite cafe. Unlike her brother, Melissa had never shown interest in Richard's money, focusing instead on her career as a pediatric nurse. "I can't believe Derek would do this," she said, after I explained everything. "Actually, scratch that. I can absolutely believe Vanessa would do this, and Derek would go along with it." "You've never liked Vanessa," I pointed out. "Because she's been pushing Derek to ask for advances on his inheritance since they got married," Melissa said bluntly. "Remember when they needed investors for that ridiculous clothing boutique? Or the down payment for a house they couldn't afford? Your father always helped them." "Dad helped everyone, Mom. But there's a difference between helping and handing over everything you've worked for." Melissa leaned forward. "Have you spoken with Aunt Claire? She's an accountant. Maybe she can look into their finances, see if there's a reason they're suddenly so desperate for money." Claire, Richard's sister, was more than happy to help. She arrived at my house that evening with her laptop and a determination that reminded me so much of her brother. "Vanessa's business is failing," Claire announced after several hours on the phone and computer. "That boutique has been hemorrhaging money for years, and they've taken out 3 mortgages on their house." "Why wouldn't they just ask for help?" I wondered aloud. "Because Richard finally said no," Claire replied. "6 months ago, Derek asked your husband for $2 million to bail out Vanessa's business. Richard refused, said it was time they learned to solve their own problems." "How do you know this?" "Because Richard called me afterward, worried he'd been too harsh. I told him it was the right decision." Claire's expression softened. "He was trying to teach Derek responsibility, Bonnie, not punish him." "Well, it seems the lesson didn't take," I said, my disappointment hardening into resolve. "Claire, would you be willing to come with me tomorrow when I confront Derek and Vanessa? Just try to stop me," she replied with a grim smile. My final call that night was to my neighbor and friend, Evelyn, a retired judge. "I'll be there," she promised, "and I'm bringing my camera. If they try anything, we'll have it documented." "I'm hoping it won't come to that," I said. "So am I, dear," Evelyn replied. "But in my experience, people capable of forging documents are capable of much worse when cornered." "Mom, what is this? Some kind of intervention?" Derek asked, looking around my living room at Claire, Melissa, Evelyn, and Jack. "Please sit down," I gestured to the couch. "You too, Vanessa." "We're actually in a hurry," Vanessa said, remaining standing. "We just stopped by to get your signature on those account transfer forms." "There won't be any transfers," I said calmly. "The documents you sent me are forgeries." Derek's face paled. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Jack stepped forward, placing 2 sets of documents on the coffee table. "Here's your father's actual signature from our files, and here's what you submitted. Care to explain the discrepancy?" There must be some mistake," Derek stammered. Vanessa's reaction was immediate and volatile. "This is absurd. Richard wanted us to manage these assets. He told us so." "Did he put that in writing? With his actual signature?" Claire asked pointedly. "We don't have to listen to this." Vanessa grabbed Derek's arm. "Let's go." I stood up. "Before you leave, I want you to understand your options. Option 1. You admit what you've done, return any assets you've already transferred, and we handle this as a family." "And option 2? Derek asked quietly. "We press charges for fraud and forgery," Jack stated. "The evidence is clear-cut." "You wouldn't," Derek looked directly at me, challenging. "You wouldn't send your own son to jail." The room fell silent. Everyone watched me, waiting for my response. "I raised you better than this, Derek," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "Your father and I taught you the difference between right and wrong." "Dad never understood what we needed," Derek suddenly exploded. "Do you have any idea what it's like living in his shadow? Everyone expecting me to be as successful as the great Richard Caldwell?" "So you decided to steal from your mother instead of working for what you wanted?" Melissa interjected, unable to contain herself. "It's not stealing if it's going to be ours eventually anyway," Vanessa argued. "That's exactly what stealing is," Evelyn corrected her. Derek took a step toward me, his face flushed with anger. "You don't need all this money. You don't need a mansion on the lake. We have plans, investments that could triple that money." "Like your wife's failing boutique?" Claire asked. Or perhaps the gambling debts you've been hiding? Derek's head snapped toward her. How did you— Your father knew, Derek, I said softly. That's why he stopped giving you money. He wanted you to take responsibility for your choices. This is all your fault, Vanessa suddenly shrieked, pointing at me. If you hadn't turned Richard against us— That's enough. I raised my voice for the first time. I've given you a chance to do the right thing. Will you take it? Or what? You'll call the police on your only son? Derek sneered, stepping closer until he towered over me. You don't have the guts. Step back from my sister, Claire warned. Make me, Derek challenged, turning toward her. What happened next occurred so quickly I barely had time to register it. Derek shoved Claire, who stumbled backward. Evelyn started her camera recording as Melissa stepped between them. Derek, in his rage, grabbed Melissa's arm, twisting it until she cried out in pain. Derek, stop, I shouted. You've made your decision then, Jack said grimly, already dialing his phone. I never thought it would come to this, I told Jack as we left the courthouse 3 months later. The restraining order had been extended, and Derek and Vanessa had both received probation for the forgery charges, with the threat of jail time if they violated the court's orders. You gave them every opportunity to make amends, Bonnie, Jack reminded me. Their choices brought them here, not yours. The investigation had uncovered more than we anticipated. Derek and Vanessa had accumulated nearly $4 million in debt through failed business ventures and Vanessa's shopping addiction. They'd been planning to sell the lake house immediately and use the stock portfolio as collateral for more loans. Do you think they'll ever understand what they did wrong? I asked, watching Derek and Vanessa exit through a different door, their expressions still defiant. Some people never do, Melissa said, joining us on the courthouse steps. They're still blaming everyone but themselves. Claire nodded in agreement. Richard always worried about Derek's sense of entitlement. He hoped Derek would grow out of it. I should have paid more attention, I admitted. Richard tried to involve me in our finances, but I let him handle everything. That was my mistake. You trusted your husband and you trusted your son. That's not a mistake, that's being human, Evelyn said gently. The question is, what will you do now? That evening, I hosted a small dinner at the lake house. Melissa, Claire, Jack, and Evelyn gathered around the table Richard had built by hand when we first bought the property. I've been thinking about Richard's legacy, I said as we finished dessert. About what he would want me to do with what we built together? Whatever you decide, we're behind you, Melissa assured me. I'm establishing a foundation in Richard's name, I announced. It will provide educational grants and small business loans to young entrepreneurs who have solid business plans but lack financial resources or connections. Richard would have loved that, Claire said, tears welling in her eyes. What about Derek? Jack asked cautiously. The foundation will have a mentorship program. When Derek is ready to take responsibility for his actions and make genuine amends, there will be a place for him there. I took a deep breath. Richard believed in second chances, but he also believed in earning them. To second chances, Evelyn raised her glass. And to Richard, I added. Later, as my friends departed and the house grew quiet, I walked down to the dock where Richard and I had spent countless evenings watching the sunset. The lake stretched before me, peaceful and constant, despite all that had changed. I thought about the question Evelyn had asked me earlier. What would I do now? For the first time since Richard's death, the answer felt clear. I would honor his memory not just through the foundation, but by living the values we had shared. Integrity, compassion, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's painful. Tomorrow, I would begin learning about our investments and property management. I would take control of my life in ways I had previously avoided. And perhaps someday, I might even rebuild a relationship with my son, not based on money or obligation, but on mutual respect and genuine love. For now, though, I simply stood on the dock, watching the last light fade from the sky, and felt Richard's presence in the gentle breeze that swept across the water. What would you do if someone you trusted betrayed you so deeply? How do you balance justice with compassion when the lines between them blur?